All right, great. So hello to anybody who's watching this video. This is my friend Kendra, and she drives trucks for a living. So we're doing this interview with her so that we can kind of get a better understanding of what it's like to be a truck driver. At this point, I'm going to let her introduce herself and just tell us what she does right now for work.
Hello, my name is Kendra. I'm currently starting a job at a company called Justman Freight Lines. I will be running post mail, so USPS mail, from Minneapolis down to Memphis, Tennessee. I'm only doing one leg, so I'll be going halfway down. Somebody else is picking up the trailer, and then they're taking it the rest of the way and bringing it back. I am currently on like a 3-week schedule, and it's a little bit weird, but I'm sure we'll talk more about scheduling.
Okay,
So
cool. Okay, so for the first question is, what was your training like when you went to get your license?
It was so it's a 4-month program, kind of like 3.5, 4-month program. It does cost money in order to do the program, but you don't always necessarily have to do it if you're looking just to get your license. There are other ways to do it, which is taking the written test, studying and taking the written test, and then finding a company that'll do the driving test with you. That may cost you a little bit of money, but not much. For me, I went to Interstate Truck Driving School. It was a 4-month program. It started with a classroom setting for a week, then 2 weeks of independent, like working on my own, going through all of the information to pass the test. At the end of 2 weeks, I passed the test, and the rest of the time was spent in a truck learning how to drive it.
Okay. Is there another test like after you start doing the actual physical truck work?
There are. So you can get endorsements for your license. Passengers, if you want to do like bus driving, hazardous materials, tanker. So if you want to like run oil around or gas or something like that. But there are many different kinds of endorsements that you can get, and for each one, you need to pass a knowledge test for.
Okay, so your first step is to pass that kind of in classroom test. So is it mostly like lectures and then quizzes, or how does
It's
it
a
work?
So we had a video that we had to study, and it's everything that is on a truck and trailer, and all of the things that you need to look at and pay attention to, along with like normal driving stuff, right? Are you checking the signs to know that what the speed limit is? Are you checking the signs to make sure that your truck can go on a certain route? You know, sign identification, but it's no real different than passing a normal driver's test. It's a lot of the same information.
Okay. Did you find it hard to like drive a truck, or was it pretty natural for you?
So I am a nervous driver in my normal car, so it was an adjustment for me. It was absolutely adjustment for me. But now I've only been at this for a year, and now I am as comfortable in a truck as I am in a sedan. I
Okay,
drive a little tiny car, so
good to know. Okay, so the next question is, how quickly after training did you get your job? Did you get a job?
3 days.
3 days. So that was really quick
Yes.
turnaround.
Well, so can I talk about that just for a second?
Sure.
Okay. So last month I was working with my cousin. I lost and my cousin decided that he wasn't going to move forward with me anymore because he had other uses for his truck. So I lost my job on Friday, and by Monday I had a job.
Okay.
So it turnaround, you the trucking industry, you kind of go until you find your niche, right? You do your first year somewhere, right? So I did my first year doing what's called end dump. Um, and then once your first year is over, then you kind of switch positions a little bit until you find, okay, this is the route that I want to do. This is the type of work that I want to do. So it's not difficult to find a job
Okay.
because it's expected that after your first year or your first 2 years, you're going to be looking for your niche.
Okay. Good to know. The next question is, how common is it to get semi-truck driving work that allows the driver to be home every day?
Actually pretty easy. So there are 3 different types of truck driving work. There's local, regional, and over the road. Local is I go out in the morning or I go out in the afternoon and I come back home. This is all I'm doing. Regional is usually like I drive to, we're in Minnesota, right? So I drive to Wisconsin or I drive to Iowa and then I come back. For regional stuff, you're usually either home every other day or you're home every Friday, one of those two. Then there's over the road trucking, and that's the trucking that you hear about most often, right? I go out, I'm out for about 3 weeks, I come home, I spend a weekend at home or like a couple of days at home, and then I go out again. And that's usually for people who have their pets with them in the truck and don't have family at home.
Okay.
Or want to live a more nomadic lifestyle, like
Mhm.
I want to be in Florida this week. Well, there you go over the road. Um, so those are the main position types. Now there are some companies that do a mix. So the big one that comes to mind is Schneider. Schneider has local deliveries, they have regional deliveries, and they have over the road deliveries. So it all depends on where you feel comfortable with. My honest suggestion is finding a place that is local for your first year or 2 years. And then after that, once again, searching for your niche.
Okay. What have you liked and disliked about the different companies you've worked for?
So the biggest complaint that I have is other truck drivers, especially truck drivers that have been around for a lot longer than I have, because they remember the good old days of truck driving when uh, when it was just a whole lot different than it is now, and why aren't they paying us as much and this, that, and the other thing. And I will say that the pay for truck driving it way outweighs the amount of training that is needed. In my first year, I went from making $25,000 a year to making $60,000 a year when I switched over to truck driving. So that is a big, big increase. But don't expect to be home every night and make $100,000 a year. Generally speaking, those are very difficult positions to get yourself into because the people who are already in them don't want to leave them.
Right. That's definitely a question on here. So maybe we can get more into that a little bit when we get to that one. But yeah,
Absolutely.
that's for sure one that the big one, right? That people wonder about. What is the best part about your job?
Oh, being out on the road. Really. I mean, I can't say enough. Like I love you're driving down a county highway in the middle of nowhere in fall and all of the colors are just all over the place and it's gorgeous. And I always mark on mark on a map like this is someplace that I'll want to come back to with my husband or this is someplace that I'll want to bring my friends to experience it. So,
Cool.
yeah. I've got some places for you, Amanda, by the way.
Awesome. So experiencing some new places on the road.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And driving on the road is it can be for me it's very relaxing. I know some people it gets stressful. So pay attention to that. If you are a stressful driver, I will say this. It doesn't matter what kind of driver you are, how much you love or hate driving. Truck driving works for everybody. If you tend to be more cautious, that's fine. Just be more cautious in a truck.
Good to know. What is the worst storm situation you've ever driven through?
Well, there are 2 that come to mind. So last winter, in 2021, in winter, I was driving out to Manitowoc, Wisconsin. That is just south of Green Bay. For those of you that don't know, it's about a 5.5 hour trip out and a 5.5 hour trip back. And we got hit with a blizzard. It was complete whiteout conditions. I literally could not see
Yeesh.
3 feet in front of my truck. So what you do in that situation is you pull over, turn on your flashers, pull over, call your dispatcher, and just tell them I can't move. It is unsafe for me to move. The second one that comes to mind is just recently I was out with my cousin and we hit this horrible windstorm. I don't know if anybody heard about it, but it was the windstorm where a bunch of trucks were being blown off of the road.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yep. So what we did is we went on an off ramp that went down. So we were in a valley, so the wind went over us.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah. So if you aren't aware of weather conditions and what to do in that, ask during training. Look it up. There are great resources online for truckers.
Nice. I did not know any of that. So thank you. Um, are you seeing an increase in women in trucking since the pandemic?
Oh, since the pandemic, that's very interesting because I wasn't a truck driver before the pandemic, so I'm not sure I'm really qualified to answer that. I will say that almost every place that I went to pick up a load or drop off a load, they were not surprised to see a woman driver.
Okay, good. So do you think there's probably been an increase then, like at least recently?
Maybe but I think the increase has been gaining since the early 2000s. I don't think that the pandemic had any real effect on it.
Okay. Okay, so this kind of gets into the money thing. So there's an idea that truckers will finish up with training and be able to ramp up to making 50, 60,000 right off the bat. Is that true?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Your first job that you get out of training, you can expect to make between $50,000 and $60,000 a year, whether it's local driving or regional driving, whichever one you decide to start with. I do not recommend starting with over the road personally. That tends to be really a lot more stressful. So, however, over the road is where the money is. So you can get out of potentially you can get out of training, find a job going over the road and make $100,000 a year and not just $50,000 a year. So,
Gotcha. So you can pretty much double your income if you're willing to do over the road.
or quadruple in my case.
Or quadruple it. Um, do you happen to know the qualities of a person that would allow someone to be highly paid right away after finishing the training and passing the test?
Absolutely. You have to want to work. You have to want to be out on the road. So there's a saying in truck driving is an empty trailer is costing you money. And that's very true. Anytime that your trailer is empty, your truck isn't moving, you're wasting money basically. So time is money. The more time you spend, the more money you can make.
Fair enough. Um, somebody asked a question about team driving. Do you make more money team driving?
Absolutely. So team driving, over the road driving, you can potentially earn between 80 to 120 if you're doing it solo. If you're doing in teams, and this is all assuming that you don't own your own truck. If you own your own truck, you're rolling in dough basically, but only if you're working.
Okay.
But team driving, if you come out and you have a team, so it's very difficult to find a team to be on as soon as you're done with training. That can take you a little bit longer. But if you do, or if you go into training with a team, you can potentially come out of training going over the road earning $200,000 a year.
And that's per person?
That
Or
is per person. Yep. Yeah.
wow,
Yes.
that's
So
crazy.
and that's the potential, right? But like I said, not all of this is like guaranteed, right? So over the road, you're guaranteed to start earning probably right around $80,000 a year, assuming that you're working, that you're moving every day,
Okay.
basically. Um, Team driving, again, you can expect to earn 180 to 220 coming straight out of school, assuming that you're moving every day. However, a lot of those positions can be more difficult to find. So when I say I came out of training and I had a job within 3 days, I did local.
Okay. Do you happen to know roughly what percent of semi truckers are on a 1099 contract?
A lot of
A
them.
lot.
There is a large population. Yeah. So the thing with truck driving is if you own your own truck, you also have to have your own authority to operate a business on the road. Um, If you don't have your own authority, then you're doing 1099 contracting with somebody who does have an authority if you own your own truck, or you are hired, or you're a company driver. So company drivers are not 1099s, they are W-2s. But you could potentially do 1099 driving your truck or somebody else's truck for somebody else's authority.
Okay. Awesome. Excuse me. I thought I took this question out because I know the answer, but you are, so right now you're over the road, but you did do local as well, right?
Yes. Well, right now I'm regional.
But you're regional now. Okay.
Yep. So I started local with Olson Carrier Incorporated. I worked with my cousin for Distribution Network, and that was over the road. And then now I'm doing regional with Justman.
Okay. How many, excuse me, how many years of experience did you have before getting, do you have your preference route yet even?
Yeah, this
You
will
do,
be my
your
perfect
preference?
route. Yeah.
Okay, so how many years did it take you to get there?
1.
So there you go. There you go.
It
So
was
that's
like
like
a
quick.
year and a half. But again, like I said, like I've been saying, right? So expect to spend your first and second year just building experience and then looking for your forever job.
Okay, gotcha. Your niche, right?
Yeah, your niche.
And you've worked for technically 3 companies, right? Because
Yes.
you're okay. And then what does a typical day look like?
So it depends on what you're doing. If you're doing local, then your typical day is I wake up, I do my at-home stuff, I drive to work, I get in my truck. If you're out on the road, you wake up, you come down from the sleeper, and you check your truck. So the first thing that you do every morning is you check your truck, you check your trailer, making sure that everything's okay. They cover all of that in your classroom experiences if you're going to be doing that, or they cover it in as part of the written test. So part of the written test has to do with your pre-trip inspection. That's what it's called.
Okay.
So you do your pre-trip inspection, you get on the road, and then you do whatever it is you're going to do, whether it's delivering a load or delivering mini loads, and then you park your truck, and then you either go upstairs and go upstairs in the sleeper and go to bed, or you go home. I will say this, truckers' days are the amount of work that you can do in a day as a trucker is very, very regulated, right? You have 14 hours to complete work. 11 of those hours can be spent driving. You cannot spend more than 11 hours driving. You cannot spend more than 14 hours on the clock.
Fair enough. So what about like eating? Do you get a chance to eat while you're
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. For every 8 hours, for every 8 hours that you are driving, you have to take a half an hour break. And I am a finger food person. I like a lot of munchies. So I have my munchies set right next to me and nom, 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 nom. There we go.
So you don't even really like do like a formal meal usually, or
Oh,
do you?
I do. Yeah,
Oh, you do. Okay.
I do, but I'm weird. But there are a lot of truckers that like don't. And there are a lot of other truckers that have animals in their trucks, right? So they're stopping a lot more often than I am.
Okay.
So
So some people are saying that, and I don't know because I don't drive trucks, but a lot of people are saying that when you're a trucker, you only can eat at gas stations. Not that you only can, but you mostly eat at gas stations. Is that true?
I will say that that's accurate. Yeah.
Okay.
Unless you're very familiar with how like Uber Eats works or other delivery things or Uber to go and get to a restaurant. Unless you're very familiar with those kinds of things and have that plan in your budget, then yeah, you're mostly eating what you bring from home or gas station food.
Okay. And what about you? What do you do usually? Do you just bring
I
stuff from home or?
Oh yeah, I bring stuff from home. But like I said, I like finger foods a lot, so I make my own finger foods and then I bring it with me. But then if I'm out and I run out of food, well, I'll stop at a gas station, pick some up. Or the other great thing about being a truck driver right now is there are many Walmarts and Cub Foods or other grocery stores in the nation that are comfortable with you pulling in, parking, doing a little bit of shopping, and then leaving.
Okay.
So I did that
So,
once.
there's a potential to maybe get some healthier non-gas station food if people want to.
Yep. Otherwise, you're bringing it yourself. Most Uh, so I'm a little confused on this, but as I understand it, most trucks that you get into, if it's like an overnight truck, what's called a sleeper truck, you'll have a cold box. What is that called? Refrigerator is the word that I'm looking for. You'll have a refrigerator in there. So
Okay, cool. That's helpful. What's next on here? How, I guess this kind of varies on which job you're in, but like, can you tell us, like, based on all three of the jobs that you've had, how long are you away from home? Were you away from home in like all three of those?
when I was doing local, I was not away from home. I would go to work, I would come home.
Okay.
When I was with my cousin doing over the road, I would leave on Monday and come back on Friday, but that's how I designed it with him. We had
Okay.
a previous conversation about that. And then now it's a little bit weird because like I said, I'm not on a like week to week schedule. I'm on a 3 week schedule. So I
Mhm.
leave on day 1, I come home on day 2, day 3 I spend at home, day 4 I leave, day 5 I come back, day 6 I leave, day 7 I come back, you know.
Mhm.
So it's going to be very interesting coming into the holidays to see where my schedule falls, and that'll change from year to year. So I might have Thanksgiving off this year, but then not be able to have it next year or the next couple of years.
Hmm, interesting.
But you know your schedule before you accept your position.
Okay.
I will say that. So before you say yes, I will come and work for you, they are telling you what kind of equipment you're going to be in, what your schedule is going to be expected to be, what is going to be expected of you as the driver, all of those things. So
Okay. So they can kind of judge whether or not it's going to work for them before they even start. That's good.
yes.
Okay, what are the physical demands that you face in your job?
So I have always done what's called no touch freight, and that means that I never touch anything that goes into my back end,
Mhm.
um, or into my trailer. There are positions where you can be more physical if you want to. My cousin is currently working for, or he's driving his own truck under his friend's authority, and but he's doing touch freight, so he's delivering food from Reinhardt, and he'll have it in the trailer, and then he'll get into his trailer and he'll pull the stuff out and he'll bring it down to the little stock room or whatever. So it depends on what you want. If you want to have a physical job, you can have a physical job. If you want to just sit and drive the truck, sit and drive the truck. That's what I do.
So I remember when you had your first job, I remember you talking about something that was really physically difficult for you. And I think it was shoveling. Was it
Yep.
shoveling your truck out or something?
Yeah, shoveling and sweeping my truck out. So with end dump, you're doing things like you're hauling coal or rocks or sand or things along those lines. So in the middle of winter, you can imagine it's going to freeze in there and you have to get out and shovel. But that wasn't surprising to me. It was just too physically demanding for me because, as it turns out, I'm fluffy. Don't know if you've noticed. Um, so it was too physically demanding for me. But there are people who have been in that position for years and years and years that are as like as in shape as I am, and they do it just fine. Like I said at the very beginning, right? It depends on. Make sure you know what kind of work that you want to do, how hard you want to work, how physical you want to be, and then when you have that conversation with your first employer, just tell them, this is what I'm expecting.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know because I think it just depends on the person. I know I wouldn't be able to handle the shoveling either. So it just depends on on what your strength level is, and
Anytime you want to come out on the road with me, Amanda, you just come on out.
yes, okay. We already answered that one. How did you find your first job after you received your license?
So that was the great thing about going through Interstate Truck Driving School. They gave me a list of 6 different employers that I could reach out to and talk to. Olson Carriers was the third one that I reached out to. The first 2 that I talked to were waste management, and neither one of those positions was driving a semi. So I was like, I want to drive a semi. That's what I want to do. I reached out to Olson. They were the third person that I spoke to. 3 days, remember?
Mm-hmm.
Now you know how much I want to work, right? So yeah, but I reached out to Olson. I told them what I was expecting, what I was looking for, what my training had told me, and the person on the other end of the phone happened to be Tom Olson, the owner of the company, and and he laid it all out for me. He was like, "This is what you will be doing. This is what you can expect." And I was like, "Well, let's give it a try. And if I don't like it, I don't like it." And he was like, "Sounds good to me."
Awesome. Okay, so now we're gonna dig in to what your first year was like as a truck driver. And you can just go ahead and tell me whatever you want to tell me, and then I might have some follow-up questions.
Okay. So my first year as a truck driver was simple and complicated at the same time. The position that I accepted was 40 minutes away from home. And part of that driving was in rush hour traffic. So 40 minutes becomes an hour and a half, right? So that was where my difficulty is I go out, I'm on the road for 11 hours a day. I spend an additional 3 hours a day mucking about with stuff in my truck, doing my pre-trip inspection, sweeping out, shoveling if I need to, those kinds of things. And then I have to drive for another hour and a half to go home. And it was too much time away from home for me, which is why I left there and started working for my cousin. What the work was actually like was I would get in my truck, I would drive to a place, they would load me with typically it was coal, because that's what Olson Carriers, their main transport is coal. Well, it's petroleum coke, which isn't actually coal. Some of you might know what that is. But so I would get loaded. I would then take it to the dump site. I would dump. I would go back. I would get loaded. I would take it to the dump site and dump it out. I would be doing between 3 and 7 runs in a day in order to get all of my time in. I was paid per load. I was not paid hourly. And Olson Carriers was a very interesting experience because they were very contained, right? They were on a different CB channel than everybody else was. So anytime I was talking to somebody, I was talking to another Olson Carrier person. And the friends that I made there had been in the business for a lot longer than I had. So I would be calling them on the phone or talking to them on the CB. There's never any restrictions that I've had for like listening to the radio. I listen to audiobooks, I listen to podcasts. I can jump around and jump stations. They say for every 8 hours you're on the road, you need to spend 30 minutes resting. I never had to like find that time to stop, because with Olson Carriers, you go, you get loaded, which can sometimes take a half an hour, and then you don't need to worry about stopping again.
Okay.
As far as the physical work for sweeping out, like we had to sweep out our trailer every once in a while. Sometimes we'd have to shovel out if it got too cold. That work, I'm told that it's a lot easier than other companies, like driving for a construction company. I don't know firsthand, but that's what I was told. So that was pretty much what my first year was. Go to work, come home, sleep.
So, you mentioned that the long drive home, like to and from, was kind of difficult because it sort of tacks on an extra hour to that really long shift that you had.
Mhm.
So did you feel like you had enough free time to yourself with that job? Or like,
I will say yes, but I don't have kids. I don't have kids. I don't have a dog. It's just me and my husband, right? I always felt like I had enough me time, but if I needed to do anything else around the house, like if I needed to come home and then make dinner or come home and vacuum, no.
yeah, that's actually one of the questions coming up is, like, would you feel that somebody with children could do a job like yours?
I would say if you have children,
Yeah.
find local work. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that I honestly don't think that having kids or having pets or having somebody else in your life that you need to be around. Well, for me and my husband, it's very interesting because we play video games all the time. That's what we do. That's how we spend time together. So I can do that anywhere. I don't have to be in the same house, right? So I would say that anybody can do this job. Literally anybody. You just have to know what you need in your life to make it work. Yeah.
Do you think there's anything like any major, um, like, I suppose there probably are disabilities that would stop someone from truck driving.
No.
No? You
Nope.
can be blind?
Huh?
You can be
What?
blind?
I don't see why not. Like, you can be blind and drive a car.
You can?
Yes. As
I
far as
didn't
I'm
know that.
aware.
I didn't know
As far as I'm aware. I mean,
that.
I had friends growing up that were blind. So,
And they
yeah,
drove
there was
cars?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um, okay.
Maybe they didn't drive. Maybe they were passengers. I'll have to think about it. This was like 30 years ago, guys. Like
That's okay.
it's possible. Well, it's possible that being blind, but like if you're in a wheelchair, if you're like missing, like you had a limb or a joint or something like, uh, I don't know of any disability that would prevent you from doing what anybody else can do. There are trucks. Even when I was working at Olson Carriers, there were trucks that had extra steps. So there was a guy that I was working with at Olson Carrier who was a lot larger than I am. He was a very, very big guy, and they added extra steps and like a little ramp type of thing so that he could get up and down because he had mobility limitations.
Okay.
But it still all falls under like equal opportunity and affirmative action stuff too. So
So there's
um
things that they can do to help. Like if you
yeah.
have an issue that they might be able to figure something out.
Yeah, and every company that I worked with aside from my cousin, they had equipment or could procure equipment for any disabilities that you have.
Okay. Here was a good question and something that everybody probably would want to know. How much PTO do you get and how often are you able to take it?
When I was working at Olson Carriers, this is a very interesting question for me personally because I have been experiencing health issues surrounding my um, we'll call it my lady time.
Okay.
And so at least once a month, I would need to take a couple of days off because I couldn't move out of bed or I was in too much pain. And then I also needed time off. Like we went to, um, did we go to Mexico? We went somewhere. We went on a 2-week vacation, me and my husband, and then, um, I took other time off too. So in my first year, I had a lot of time off and nobody really even said anything. Now, I will say that if it's PTO, unless it's PTO, you don't get paid for it. So once again, if your truck's not moving, you're not making money. But there's no reason why you can't take time off that I have seen in my experience. So
Okay. So it's pretty, like, it's pretty relatively easy to say, hey, I need this time off.
yeah, another thing too is when I was driving over the winter, there were days when I there's no way I'm going to get in that truck and drive in this weather. And then you just don't drive.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So if you're not
they're pretty,
comfortable,
so they're gonna be okay with that, like, if you are uncomfortable driving or if it's bad conditions.
yep, and they are required to. It is a federal regulation.
Okay, that's good to know. I know that's probably an issue or a concern of a lot of people.
Yep.
So that's pretty much all I have. And just at the end, I just wanted to see if there's anything else that you wanted to say to people. I kind of wrote, like, what advice would you give to someone who wants to get their CDL and become a truck driver? Like, anything else that you can think of that you'd want to share with people?
Absolutely. So the advice that I would give is give yourself time. Give yourself time to understand how you feel in the truck driving world. You know, don't expect or don't expect anything to happen overnight. If you want something, work for it. But that's kind of the advice I'd give to anybody for anything. So I will say one last thing though. There is one very important thing that I want to say that I want people to know, and that's come be a truck driver. It's rewarding. It's an interesting lifestyle. It is not typically something that you see every day, and there are an insane amount of resources online. If you have any questions that I didn't answer or you want more information about something that I said, you can go on to thetruckerreport.com. That is uh, a forum place that you can go on. You can ask questions, you can talk to people, you can see answers that have already been given, or just Google it. What does a typical day look like as a truck driver? There are lots of things out there. But come be a truck driver. It's a lot of fun.
Yes, I think that there are a lot of people interested in this, and I really appreciate you talking about your experiences. I hope it's helpful for everybody who's watching. And I don't even think I mentioned that I am Amanda. So I'm Amanda, I'm a career counselor at Avivo, and I just wanted to do this interview with Kendra today so that we could get some information about what it's like to be a trucker for everybody who's interested in it. So thank you to Kendra and to everybody who's tuning in to us. So thank you.